Welcome. Okay. First.
We need to call the meeting to order.
Okay. The meeting's called to order at 4:03. And again, John Grieve is an official member of the committee. We're really excited to have him on board and welcome. Hopefully we can all get together. I was talking with Rebecca, and still not completely sure that they're going to reopen things in September. So, but hopefully that'll happen. And no public comments, I assume. So the first thing is corrections to the agenda. I have one correction, approved minutes of the June meeting, not the March meeting. Any other, and I've already done that. Any other corrections on the agenda? Okay. Move to accept.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay. Minutes of the June meeting. And thanks again, Peggy, for getting these out. Any corrections, changes to the June 8th meeting notes?
One thing which is now moot, and that is under the NRAB report, the second item. It said $60,000 in fund for further flora and fauna. The number was 65,000.
Okay.
That article was actually withdrawn, so
Oh, okay.
we'll get to that.
Okay,
Okay. All right.
I'll make that correction.
And you got the
Okay,
one
any
little
other?
one little typo. I thought I sent it in. There was a typo on one of the words.
Oh,
It's a.
I got it, Danny.
You got it? Well, there is on the left heading, bold underlined, something that should end with a Y that is ending with a V.
Oh, okay.
Bold and underlined.
Bold and underlined.
Oh, elementary. I think the Ys just don't go below on elementary school and on property management. When it's underlined, the Y doesn't, it cuts off the tail.
No.
Well, okay.
I'll double check and make sure it's not a V, but
Okay. So besides those
thank you, Denny.
changes and additions, any other comments? Someone move to accept?
I moved.
Okay. Second.
A second.
Me, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? No. Okay. So a couple of things that I'd like to do. I promised Lynn a short meeting. I really wanted to get together though, because we usually hit the ground running after the town meeting in April. It's almost the end of July. And so if we want to do some things, we have to, for next year, we got to start working, I think, pretty quickly on them. The first, and this is chair report, I'm going to use that to say one of the reasons I wanted to meet today was to get a vote on the two properties that were indefinitely postponed at town meeting. My understanding is that what was said, and I appreciate both Denny talking to the issue and John Kumler for presenting. And John, I think everybody knows, has also stepped down. So we have one vacancy, if anyone knows anyone. But to get this to the Board of Selectmen so that they can get it to the planning board is something that I'd like to do. I don't if people want a discussion, we can do it, but we voted on this a couple of times before. The two properties are the, oh, I just lost my map 3186 in Blackfish Creek and map 42-137 wetlands at the end of Bayberry Trail. And again, I think we've talked through these and voted them before. If there's any addition or if there are any questions about it, Denny, Chairman?
Yeah, I just, I got no problem with the properties, as we know, but the procedure here, I've talked to a couple of people about whether there's going to be a fall town meeting and whether these properties can get on that. I would encourage you to try to pursue that.
Okay. You know, even if that doesn't happen, the way things have been going, I think to start now for, you know, a April town meeting makes sense. But I do hear you. We'll try to give it a try, because I would hope if the planning board missed last time that they'll take it up quickly this time around. I think it's pretty straightforward. Anyway, any other comments? Move to accept?
I move.
Aye. Okay, well, that's true. Second, I second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any against? Okay, so that's one. The other thing to look ahead at is that there are four properties, two sets of properties that I think are worth getting into conservation. Unfortunately, Nancy's not around. I'm not sure where they are. One of them is map 29, 400, and 505. And just to remind people, those are properties on Payne Hollow Road. There are a number of properties in conservation, both WCT and town, right along that road. And these two would just be perfect fits to that. I'm not sure, the last I checked on 505, it had not been, it's in the courts right now and it had not been accepted by the town, but I will check on that. The only other thing to look at when you're looking at these properties is that and I think it's 505, one of the two has a very short road that's been used as access to the pond, sometimes called the skating pond back there. So just, is that going to, there's been some real negative feelings about, you know, the things going into conservation if it's going to decrease access. So just something to look at with that. The other two, and I'm not presenting it for this year, but for the year after, no, we'll see what people think, but there are properties 288 and 289 that are right off Bond Road, off Old Wharf Road. And we'll get to it later, but the Swain property that Conservation Trust is just put into conservation. One of them has been preserved currently. There's another one that Conservation Trust is getting from Swain. Seems to me that it might make sense to put two town properties, that is the 288 and 289, are right next door to both of the Swain properties. And so I would suggest waiting until 2003 and then putting those in. But again, we can move forward with that if people have an interest. One of them is already in, correct, Benny?
Is everyone hearing this kind of strange background noise?
Yes,
Yeah,
sounds like a dog.
It's,
We're
I'm
getting,
not-
we're getting repeat or reverb, I think.
yeah. I'm not sure where it's coming from. Somebody have a phone on or something?
I have a fan. I'll mute myself and you can tell.
Okay. See if that, yeah, that seemed to do it. So again, we have to check on the one property. Any comments on the other property, 36, 288 and 289. Again, it's off Bond Street off Old Wharf and adjacent to two properties that Conservation Trust is putting in. One's in conservation already, Denny, right?
That's correct. And the other one's under a purchase agreement and just waiting for the state to authorize the conservation land tax credit. So it's on course and it should happen.
Okay.
Can I go back to 29, 400 and 505? Because I've never been able to find 505.
Oh, it's not there.
It's not on the
Okay.
map.
It's
Okay.
not on the 2012 map. It's a new addition when there's a project going on and back, and the town found the property. And so that's why it's not official yet, is they then have to bring it to land court, et cetera. And,
Okay, but it's next to
so
that,
we're waiting.
it's next to 400 maybe?
It's right next to 400.
It's that little, it's a keystone shaped lot. I'm thinking, okay, but so it's there. All right, so it actually fronts on Payne Hollow Road. So that would
Exactly.
make it contiguous. We'd have a big swath of conserved land then.
Exactly. So this would just complete, right now, there's some in conservation on the left, some on the right. And this would allow that whole piece of Payne Hollow Road to go into conservation.
Okay.
So I think it's worth doing. I'm just not sure where that's at, yeah. Any thoughts on the other two parcels? Again, my thought was just as Conservation Trust has both of them, and conservation would be an easy sell to the town, but it's certainly something we could move forward more quickly if you wanted to.
Bruce, I'll just comment that I see you get those properties because I think there are other conservation opportunities down there.
Do you think it makes sense to try to do it earlier rather than later, Danny?
I'd take it in your normal course of events. I'm not pushing.
Okay,
Just to let you know, I'm very positive to it.
good.
So
Yeah,
are-
I think there's no, I had been a little while since I was out there, but there are no big access issues or no, this isn't a piece of land that, at least as I'm seeing it, we would be inviting people to do, but it would be a way to put some waterfront land into conservation. And again, it go along nicely with what Conservation Trust is doing.
Is that 288 and 289?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, okay.
On map 36, straight off Old Wharf. Okay, and thank you for listening to those. And if things go along and people have some change of heart with that, let me know. But
And
Vice
by the
Chair,
way,
anything?
just as a reminder, I don't know if John has his map books yet. Do we need to get those back?
Yeah. I wrote a note and I will make a telephone call. As a tradition, people have handed their maps in. So I did send out a note saying, let's keep the tradition going, but I have not yet received. So I'll give them a call, John, to make sure that you get it.
Okay.
In between, just so you know, if you go into the town website, you can bring it up and then you can you can just scroll down essentially and so get into it. So it is available online as well. But I think it's been good for everybody to have the paper, and if for some reason they've lost or whatever, we'll get you another one. But I'm hoping that moves forward.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Vice Chair, anything, Tom?
No, nothing new.
Property management, anything, Fred?
No,
Trail guides, Lynn?
She's on mute.
Oh,
Lynn,
you're on mute.
I just handed my last, leave packages of trail guides to the library. So maybe I can coax my granddaughter to help me reassemble some. But right now, I don't have any assembled, just haven't had a chance. And Denny, you have a map you were going to give me changes to before I reprinted the Walker and the Drummer, I think it's Walker and Drummer Cove. Right before you had your surgery, you told me to hold off because you had a change. Do you remember that? Denny, you muted.
Yep, just trying to get out of there. I do remember that, and I do have them, and I will get them to you. We also worked on the language on that too.
I think everything else was done, except you said you had a change on one of the maps.
Yep, but I'm just, are you going to be using the newer version of the trail guide?
No, I still have plenty
That's my
left.
point.
So you're going to leave it at the
Missing
moment?
something here. Now, on the Drummer Cove and the Walker property, we had a few little wording changes on the trail guide. Is that the version that you're going to use?
For printing?
Yes.
I'm sure. Whatever we last agreed on, I had it all set. I haven't
Okay.
back to look at it, but we'd done everything for those two.
Okay.
And it was a map change.
Yep. Okay.
I've still got like, a fair amount to put together packages now, so it's not critical.
Okay. I gave a new version of the Pilgrim Springs, Fox Island Marsh when the Historical Society had a tour out there. So I've got that ready to go when you want it.
For printing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's 4 basically ready to be printed. And Lynn just needs to confirm that she has the most recent versions of the Drummer Cove and Walker. Is that correct?
Not sure what the 4 are. I'd have to go back and
Well,
look.
Denny just said Pilgrim Springs, Fox Island. Is that 2 separate or 1?
That's one.
Okay, so,
But the trails out there are so different than what is in that old map. That's why I redid it. And
Right.
map that I had sent you before, but I don't have all the trails, and we redid the wording on that one too.
We did a lot of rewording, Denny. I haven't gone back to remind myself of which we did, but
Okay. Can I have view of what you're going to get printed before you print it, please?
yes.
Okay.
And it's not going to happen until you give me that map, and I can go back in my emails to find what you said. I'm not
Okay.
print anything.
All right.
And I'll play them back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. With the elementary school, Peggy, anything?
no, and we had talked, Bob and I had talked about possibly meeting with the teachers right after school ended, and it didn't happen.
Okay.
So I will follow up with him.
Okay. And Conservation Trust, I thought I'd just talk about a few. There are 4 new parcels that are going into, people who have seen, probably the easiest thing to do, their most recent blurb here. You can see where they are, but they're all, or at least 3 out of the 4 are in the areas that have some interest to us. The Swain property is again abutting, and so 2 properties that town owned that I think should be in conservation. Butterfield is down by the area that we're putting into conservation, or hopefully will be this year. I guess the other big information is that the trail for the Herring River Outlook is ready, and it sounds like the parking is there too, Denny, and
It's
for the Herring River Outlook.
Overlook.
Overlook, sorry.
It's even more ready. We put the sign up today. We shored up some of the drainage problems we had on the parking area. And so it's ready. I've got a version of the trail guide and map out for review. And I've gotten some good comments back, and I think I'll be ready for that by the end of the week. So
Okay. Anything else from Conservation Trust you wanted to bring up?
today was our last day of our AmeriCorps, as was the town's last day, but that AmeriCorps person is staying on and working for the Shellfish Department. So
That was good.
How about the fall hike, Denny?
we're on schedule for September 11th, and we're getting information out. We're a little concerned that we might be too popular, so we're going to ask for people to register beforehand, and hope that we'll be able to accommodate what we're going to get. We'll be starting at the Long Pond parking area and going up to Spectacle Ponds, Kinnecum Pond, and back down some trails. It's, except for about 200 yards, it's all on dirt roads in the woods there. So it ought to be pretty. We have made contact with the people who own the Kinnecum Pond house, and we will be using that as one of the stopping points. And it should be pretty interesting. That house was built by Dr. David Belding, who's one of the icons of old Wellfleet. And we've got some stories to talk about that. We will be going by Gross Hill. There really is a Gross Hill, much to the surprise of some people. And it's, I believe, 111 feet above sea level. So that's one of the higher points in town. So we'll have stories about the Gross family and the Gross sisters and all
Okay.
I thought
Friends of the
that
Herring
was
River
for
Lynn,
people riding their bikes up there. But
what's that?
I thought that was just for people riding their bikes. Gross Hill.
Denny, is there any chance you could spell Kinnecum for me? Is it with a K or a Q?
that. KINNICUM.
Exactly how I spelled it. Thank you.
You have to turn that
You're-
thing on.
Your only mistake was that you doubted yourself.
Okay, Lynn, Herring River, anything briefly?
Well, they've had a great $500,000 grant from the DER. I always forget what that stands for. Department of Environmental,
Environmental Resources?
something, it could be. So that was great. And they
I
also
believe
heard
I believe it's restoration.
Restoration? Okay.
environmental restoration, it is.
Yeah.
And they also heard that the seashore is going to be addressing the problems with the culverts. So, quite an effort was starting to get into getting permitting for doing that. And now the Friends of Herring River and the Herring River project doesn't have to take that on. So that was good news. And I guess the other thing is people were concerned that with the overwash at Duck Creek and all the mosquitoes, that there was some talk of blaming the Herring River project. And I think that was all cleared up, that, it hasn't exactly started yet. And in fact, it's the opposite. If the water was flowing, we wouldn't have that many mosquitoes. I think the right word got out. It was just a little tense for a while. I think that.
There is a grant that the Friends are applying for from North American Wildlife, something, it's NACA. They're using our Herring River Overlook property as collateral to get a $2 million grant.
Oh, good.
A win-win, Danny.
Yep,
And what is the size of the grant, Denny?
$2 million.
Okay.
Fantastic.
So for the housing partnership, now I said I was going to cover and I wasn't able to go to their last meeting. I just wanted to make sure I've been in that before, but between family craziness and some other stuff, it's hard for me to do. I will if nobody else wants to, but it's a nice active committee. Is there anybody else who is interested in being liaison to that committee?
I'll do it. Someone's going to have to tell me what this involves, but I'll take that on.
Oh, great, John. Yeah, this is the Housing Partnership is the local group that supports the Housing Authority and are really involved with the creation of affordable housing in town. So the Lawrence Road project and
Mhm.
they work, do a lot of stuff with PR, to help with some fundraising, that kind of thing. There's no heavy lifting with that at all, but it's a fun committee if you're interested.
I would be interested. I'm interested in affordable housing, and it seems like something we need to give a lot of thought to right now.
Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure.
Great.
Okay, I'll let them know, or we can both let them know.
Okay.
CPC, Fred?
Okay, I attended my first two meetings with the CPC. The first one, I was not officially a member, I was just a guest. At that one, they talked about the possibility of opening up a grant round around for applications to put to a town meeting this fall, if there is one. And then we met again on July 7th, and we decided it was feasible, we should do it. So they're setting up, the deadline for grants is August 9th. They are aiming for what they call time sensitive applications, ones that really need to get into this fall round if there is one. The other thing I learned from the meeting was that we have $41,797 in open space reserve at the present time, and more will come when they divvy up the next round of money.
Yeah, so a great time to look for some projects with the.
Yes.
All right.
And in that regard, I know that I didn't have much information about what they do and how they do this. So I got some guidelines, application form, and the criteria. I thought I'd like to send copies of those to everybody on the committee so they know what we're talking about.
Sure.
Sounds good.
Mm.
I think that would be really helpful. Thanks, Fred.
Okay.
Okay, Tom, NRAB?
Well, we had initially two articles at town meeting. So Lynn, is your phone on still, or? Anyway, I'm still getting feedback from someone. The first, the $25,000 request to do a engineering feasibility study to look at redirecting dredge materials into replenishing the marsh in Duck Creek passed, and there wasn't much discussion about it. So John Reel has been writing up requests for proposals to various outfits that might want to propose get involved in doing this. There's nothing's been final yet on that, and it hasn't gone out. The requests haven't gone out yet. The other article, the $65,000 for doing a study of the flora and fauna of the harbor, was taken off at the request of the select board because there was so much other money on the table out there, and trying to figure out, it would have to be a loan, I guess, and So we decided to wait and hopefully get it on the fall agenda if possible for the fall town meeting. So we'll see. The other thing, the committee is starting to look at reviewing the health of the ponds, which has been one of our charges, and try to figure out who's in charge, basically, you know, the town, the seashore, the abutters, et cetera, et cetera. So that's being looked at again. I mean, there's been several other attempts at this in the past, but it's the beach committee and all that are involved. So, or the beach administrator.
Through the pond stuff. Okay.
Tom, I believe all the great ponds in town are state property.
Right.
But
Right.
the problem is because they're in the park, and what I was going to say is the park has done a whole bunch of research. Steve Smith, Sophia Fox so there's a lot of work that's already been done. So
Right.
I think it is one of those ones where the water in the pond is state, it's true, but the reality of it is that the park has been active in looking at quality of the ponds, including doing secchi dishes and looking at changes in pH and all kinds of
Right.
stuff.
And it turns out, I guess the state really doesn't want much to do with it. I mean, they do,
Right.
in fact, own the water, but it's up to the seashore and the other agencies involved to deal with it, I guess. So,
Right.
anyway, so that's something that's down the road.
Okay. So just with very quickly with the old business. So we haven't gotten together, and I'm just putting it out there again for those who volunteered to look at this land grant. I think if we could do it and not, I don't think we have to meet on Zoom. I think we could, hopefully we can get together and meet and talk over, see whether it even makes sense to do this. We don't have an identified property, but if we could get things started at least, then if something came up, we'd be able to move forward with it. People, should I send out something to, I think John, Fred, and Peggy said you might be willing to meet. You want me to just send out some dates and we'll find one?
Sure. Yes.
Sure. My deck's available if you want to meet in my back deck. Open air
good.
meeting.
I missed that. What are you meeting on? I'm sorry.
This is on the 5-year plan and the land grant. You know, in other words, there's money there to get the plan if we have some property. And so at least to look at that, to do whatever initial write-up we can do and to try to strategize. It keeps going to the back of the line. Hard one to get excited about, but well, I mean, it's some real money there if we could do it. Okay. The next is, yeah.
Excuse me, is there an existing 5-year plan or are we starting from scratch on this?
We are, well, no, there's a 5-year plan that was renewed as of 2008, I believe, and then they gave us a provisional renewal in 2015. But as of, you may know the date better than I do, Denny, but as of last year, it's now, we no longer have an active plan. So on the one hand, there are 5-year plans, I can bring them all in, that have been done before. Part of the problem was the person in town who was responsible for this was sitting on it for a long time and said, gee, we've gotten the provisional approval, there's not anything else to do. And the reality of it was when we got it that there was a lot to do. And so mainly Denny and myself worked on it for some time, but decided that it, you know, rather than send that to the state and potentially run into some problems with them, that it made sense to start over again.
I think that makes sense. Could one of you send me a copy of that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can both. I'll
Or
send
have
it.
you
And then,
already?
right. I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay.
And I'll bring over the paper copy as well.
Is it
Okay.
on the
Yeah.
website, Bruce?
I don't believe so.
No, I don't think it's on the website.
Excuse me,
But I have it, yeah,
Bruce, I'm sorry, I have to go.
yep, I do understand. Thank you very much for being there for the
Okay.
votes.
Okay,
All right,
Lynn.
talk to you later.
Bye-bye, Lynn.
bye.
But
Okay. So the next is search for new chairman, I wrote. And just to let people know, I have given my notice. We're going down to Florida. I hope I asked Rebecca about whether the town was doing any hybrid meetings. And she said right now they don't have the technology and they don't have Mia. And so the person, prom governor was working on it. So, but we've had some number of reasons, family problems, some other things that have just kind of, I'm done. I really would like to stay on the committee, but if anybody knows anybody who would be interested in this position, I really, as of when we go down to do some work on the house in November, I'm done, and I have given that notice. The one thing that I'm not suggesting is taking over the committee, but another person who's been interested is Liz McDonald. And for those of us who've been on the committee for a while, she was on the committee. When she initially asked, there were no openings, and she was working Tuesday nights. But I think if you really were interested, we could relook at the time we're meeting and see. I sent out a note, but I'm not sure I have her email. So again, if somebody does have that, if you have it, Denny, get that to me. It's just her name with Gmail didn't do it. So,
I imagine she's changed things, but I'll see what I have.
okay. Okay, and just the other thing to bring up again, the suggestion from Denny and Mark, and I wasn't even aware we were doing this, that had been done before, but it has, the properties we put into conservation should have a conservation deed. And I have been in contact with Nancy Vale, who seems unenthusiastic, to say the least, about this, and said essentially the deeds are in Barnstable. So I mean, that's something that I'm very willing to take on, but I'm not sure how to go about it. Is that something Mark could help us with, Denny, or?
He can get you started. It's an ideal project for AmeriCorps. And I believe that the town is going to have an AmeriCorps person next year. We are not, so.
Okay. Okay, so I will talk with Doug as well and see if that's something we can get them to do. It sounds like it's mostly a bit of busy work. We need to make sure we have the correct list, et cetera, and then look at the ones, but
Well, you can get a copy of the deeds from the Barnstable County, and that's a good thing for an AmeriCorps person to do. Because
Okay.
it's boring, repetitive, but important.
okay, so again, I'll talk with Doug and make sure they're having somebody and we can maybe get started, add that to the, because I think it's important. I do think it makes sense. We're going through all this work to get these properties in conservation. As we know from the agri property and others, if the town doesn't act to dot their i's and cross their t's, things can fall apart.
Is this something that can wait till next year?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
And remind me, Mark is with the Cape Cod
Compact.
Compact.
Mark Robinson.
Yeah, okay.
okay, last few things in reviewing access issues. Now, I wasn't able to go to that meeting, which is that same time as the housing meeting last week. But I do understand you were saying, Fred, that there's a note by the area near the agri properties saying shellfishermen only.
What it's on a post right by the sign where you would go up the path through the agri property to get to the shore, and it says shellfishing only in this area. This area for shellfishing only. By order of the town selectmen.
Really?
Yeah, let me read the sign. I got it in my picture here. All right. No,
Frankly, the selectmen have no authority to do that over private property.
this area is open only for commercial shellfishing. Valid commercial permits required per order of the town of Wellfleet Select Board. Violations are subject to a fine of $50.
Huh.
Oh, but that may be different. No, there's recreational shellfishing and commercial shellfishing. And so the way I would read that phrase is not saying that non-shell fishermen can't go over there. In fact, people have tons of kayaks over there. That if you're shellfishing, you have to be a commercial shellfisherman. It's not a recreational spot. The way you're saying it,
I thought it was a
that's my
curious
read
spot-
on that.
a curious spot to put it at the access to the path. Now, somebody might say, hey, I can't use this path because it's only open for commercial shellfishing.
I really question why the Board of Selectmen or Select Board has the authority to make that statement. That's private property by the Agar family. It's theirs.
That's what I was asking. Did the Aggers approve this or ask for it?
Yeah.
I thought-
Again,
So
I'm not, I will contact, I'll contact Ryan and just see, because I think I don't think this is access only to commercial shellfishermen. There are lots of locals who have their boats over there, et cetera. I think this is saying no recreational shellfishing, which is different. But I will check, because I do hear what you guys are saying. And if I'm incorrect, that's important to know. Because the last I heard from the Access Committee, the town was looking at even taking legal action to make sure that they were able to get over that property. It's been used forever. And then if that happened, then I think it would be a great opportunity to use that, half of that 40,000. I think it's only 10,000. In fact, the Aggers were asking for access, and to take our CPC money and use some of that for this. So the last Access meeting that I went to, that wasn't the tone of things at all. So I'm not sure where this is coming from. I mean, I'm not in the loop there, but I will check with Ryan and see how to read this. But I do hear you, even if I'm correct, it's kind of an ambiguous
Yeah,
sign to be putting up there.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Is everybody
Really
aware
hard to
Ryan's
enforce
now-
that, that's for sure.
What was that, Denny?
Is everybody aware that Ryan's now the chair of the Select Board?
Yeah.
Yes.
What was
And I-
that all about? Anybody know?
I just encountered some town employees who were shaking their heads in amazement for all sorts of reasons.
Okay. The last thing to bring up here is that Ryan has been Curly has been interested in getting a look at all the town parcels, and so he's asked whether that's something we would like to be involved with. And given that we both are charged to look at disposition of town-owned land, we were gonna look at these properties, at least some of them anyway. At least John Cumler was strongly pushing for this to see what's out there. I said I would bring it to the committee. I don't want to get into a long discussion about it right now, but just to see if there's some general interest in doing that. Ryan has also put together, a high priority parcels within heavily built areas with low visibility, or parcels with a history of misuse or dumping, medium parcels abutting privately owned properties, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea, his idea was to look and see whether there's been some misuse of the properties, to inspect them like we inspect ours. The other thing that John Comler was talking about was taking a look at those properties as part of the 5-year plan and see whether there's a master plan that we should be considering to make that part of it. So, there are some reasons to do this. What one of the questions that's unanswered is, to do this once is probably something that's worthwhile, but it certainly is not something, in my opinion, that's doable on a yearly basis. Is this a 5 or 10 year project or something like that? But the reason I'm bringing it up right now is just to see whether there's any interest in pursuing this. This is really at the beginning of things. I will send out Ryan's recommendations for high priority, et cetera.
That would be very interesting to see.
Yes.
To see
Yeah, so I'll
kind of what
forward
he's
that.
heading at. Because currently we are, well, Fred basically has been looking only at the properties we've put into conservation, right? So the
Correct.
town owned that.
Well, yes, I've been doing that on an annual basis. But when I came on the committee and Bruce put me on land management, I thought, well, I should know something about the open space that the town has, whether it's in conservation or not. And so I got a list of all the open space from the assessor. And that includes things like parking lots. So that's not particularly interesting, but anyway, I started with the larger pieces and I've been working my way through those. I've done about 30, and basically what I do is go in and look at the property and see what its features are, whether it's pine oak woodlands or part marsh or what. And I've been writing a little write-up about it. And thinking about ones that we might want to put into conservation. That's why I came up with pushing for the properties out on Indian Neck, which unfortunately the select board did not buy. Yeah, I would plan to continue looking at them. I'm not doing it now because the bugs out there drive me away.
There is.
Yeah. I think that's an excellent.
I'd welcome company in doing this,
Right.
but I'm not looking for. Well, I note if there's things that I think shouldn't be done on these properties, but that wasn't my objective.
Yeah, it
Right.
seems like this is an opportunity to do something for Ryan Curley that could benefit us long term, especially if it's something that Fred has been doing, that we've been making some overtures. We've been talking about trying to get a better handle on properties. And if we could have that priority list and find out how many of those has Fred already checked.
But it's a long, I mean, it depends how you frame this, okay? The town-owned lands are a lot of land, and some of the ones, I think that, bringing up those 600 properties, the dog park, and, I don't think the dog park should be, but anyway, but it's a good question. And certainly the wells, should those be in conservation? And as Denny was saying, some of the areas around are in conservation, but this is what we would be doing. So we're looking at those specifically for our purposes. What Ryan is saying is he would like to take a look for the town, both for some of these town properties being abused? Are there other uses? So it expands it. Right now, what we do, and even with this, as you know, Fred, we have things aren't as smooth in terms of communication with the Board of Health at Conscom that as we would like them to be.
Right.
But at least those go in. They get all our information. We have it, but this wouldn't go to Conscom. This would be something that would go to the Board of Selectmen, presumably. And again, I've asked that, but I presume it would be. because most of the land we're looking at won't be conservation land. It may be land that we're interested in. If we're going to do it, it's not just Fred and myself. I think it would be really a team effort.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think your question about, is it something we could commit to on an annual basis? I don't know that that's realistic, but
Right.
if we
No,
started with the priority list, if there was some way to, that maybe the particular properties are inspected annually, maybe some are reviewed every other year and some every 5 years, as time permits. I don't know.
Right.
Fred, I think you'd have some sense of kind of what you've been able to accomplish, and especially if you could see Ryan's list and see how your list matches his.
well, Ryan's list is
I'd be interested in seeing his list.
Right.
I've done about 30 properties and a little short write-up on each one. That's mostly descriptive and potential in my eyes.
good. Thank you, Fred, for doing that too, because it's, I think to take a look at these, because they're the well properties. I mean, that's something that really is worth looking at seriously. And, we need to, with all of these where there's some town interface, I think we know we have to do our homework and get some feeling from the select board and some of the other committees before charging forward.
And can I ask Fred, where the write-ups that you're doing, are they going to Hillary and Doug?
In a folder.
In a folder. I mean, it'd be interesting to show that to Ryan as here's a baseline, here's what we've been doing.
Right.
And I mean, he may have a whole different set of expectations about what that report would look like, but the fact that you've already completed 30 of them, I think that would give us some leverage to say, this is what, we can do. We're not qualified to go evaluate them in terms of other criteria, but from an open space committee, this is what we could look at.
I can show him what I have been doing.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
What his
That would be
criteria are.
Again, the list should be the same. I mean, these all come from Nancy Vale, that the town lists are coded, and so you can get conservation, total town property, et cetera. So everybody, minus, there have been occasional mistakes that we found over the years, but most of this should be really accurate and available to everybody. Ryan's agenda, it sounds like, is different than ours. It's what we do with the conservation properties, but he wants to extend it. But I really agree with what people are saying. I think it's an opportunity, and Fred's already taken that opportunity to kind of look around and see whether we can find other properties that really are worth putting into conservation. As we know from Indian Neck, we unanimously thought that those lands should be in conservation, and the access issues made that impossible. But I do think it makes sense to look at other properties and potentially at some point even to revisit those if we can do some educational work with people. Okay, so it sounds like there's some interest. I don't know if we need a vote or just to get.
There's interest, but we'd like to know more about what he wants.
Yeah.
But I think we should show him what we've done. I mean,
Study his.
I think it needs to be, unless they're going to give us new mission statement.
Right.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know what he wants, but it would be, I think, just as helpful to say, well, we, meaning Fred, has already been looking at town properties. In addition to those, not just those that we've put into conservation, but other properties that seem to fall closer to our mission.
Right.
And this is what we've been looking for. And is this something that dovetails with what you're hoping to do, Ryan?
One of Ryan's pet peeves is abuse of property. And an example he gave me was the platform that is at the, what do we call that point? Whalebone Point. The platform there, he said, if you go to one corner, and I forget which one he told me, but he said, and you look under there, there are bags and bags of dog poop. Somebody shouldn't be doing that. So he's really after abuse of the property.
Right. No, that's what I was trying to say. His agenda, I mean, that's part of our charge too, the land, and that is land and conservation, is to do these inspections. But he really is expanding that. I do think that, as people are saying, there are ways that this could be a win-win, as long as we're clear about what we're doing, how much we're agreeing to buy into, et cetera. And it sounds like there's some interest on the part of the committee. Are there people who would be very opposed to this, or?
Why don't you share his list first and have some more discussion?
I
Okay.
was going to suggest that as well, because we need to be on the same page with them and know what we're sort of getting into, so we know what we're negotiating with them.
And let me just say, I think the thing that's important, the list is huge, okay? But what he's done, and this is where we need to work with him, is place the properties in high priority, medium, low, very low. And there are a number of the beach properties we would not be looking at, because the beach committee looks at that. And medium, very low would be parcels without an active trail that don't abut private property or roadway. So again, the assumption is those properties are going to get very little abuse, or containing a trail that do not abut an active roadway. Those are or landlocked by National Park Service. Some of these, to me, some of his ways of putting in high priority, they're high priority to him. They're not all intuitively obvious to me, but I think this is where we would do the work.
I think that's what we need to begin with, is his list.
Exactly. And then
Right.
really take a look at.
If you could send that to all of us, I think that would, then we could be
So I'll
ready to
send him
discuss
that
it at the
note.
next meeting.
If I have I'm not sure if I have Nancy's list. Do people want the list of all the properties as well?
No, we want Ryan's list,
Oh,
because Fred has Nancy's list, doesn't he?
More or
Yeah, I
less.
have Nancy's
Yeah.
list too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think we want to start with, we want to see what Ryan
Okay.
is looking at. I
And I'm
think,
interested in the prioritization of
Yeah.
these properties, because I
Right.
think that's going to be a big part of the discussion.
Absolutely.
I agree. I think that's where we need to know what his thinking is.
Okay. No, an hour, not quite as short as I said, but not too bad. Anything
Okay.
else people
We
have to bring
covered a
up?
lot. I would love Denny to talk a little bit about the email he sent out, his discussion with Ryan about CRs versus CONSCOM.
Well,
And is that something you're comfortable giving us a little update on?
there's nothing to update since I sent that note. We had a discussion. He deemed it important enough to come over and visit with me. And he really has a bugaboo with handing properties over to the Conservation Commission. And I said, as part of that, the fact that you're losing control, and he admitted that that was part of it. But he also, didn't feel like CONSCOM was doing a good enough job of monitoring their properties. And that's when we got into the bags of dog poop and all that sort of stuff. But his thought was that, is there some way to use a CR for the town selectmen to give a CR to the CONSCOM so that there would be a monitoring of the properties? That's a waste of time, in my opinion. A CR is a very specific document that gets approved by various agencies, including the Conservation Commission, the Board of Selectmen, and the DCR, the Department of Conservation and Recreation, and finally the Secretary of the Environment. So it's not the right way to do it. If there's something you want to do on the property and divide up how it's done, well, you can do that by deed. But
But I'm also, Dan, I'm confused about what you gain if you put it into, if you take a conservation restriction on it, it's in conservation essentially. But what is, I don't quite understand what the point is. I mean, if the concern is that we should be a better job and do a better job inspecting, I have to admit, I walk by that, I go over, it's one of my regular walks and I've never looked underneath that thing.
yeah,
It's one of my pet peeves too. I mean, people leaving those bags around, but just leave the poop. It's better than the
That's why
bags.
they're called pet.
Yeah,
but
anyway.
I agree with you, Bruce, that to my mind, it's just as effective to have CONSCOM jurisdiction as it is a CR. And a CR takes a lot of effort, as John Grieve knows, and it takes a lot of steps and all that sort of stuff. And it is a wonderful tool in the right locations, in the right circumstances. But for the town to use it would be a disaster.
Well, I think,
The only CRs the town has done on our land is when we get a state grant. And we have to give some sort of interest to the town, so.
it sounds like finding out what his ulterior, what was he trying to accomplish? And, my impression, and this was really helpful for you to give us this background, my impression had been just from the few times we were questioned, or our properties that we were looking into were questioned by him. I got the impression that he was concerned about too much restriction by putting things in CONSCOM. And it sounds like what his concern is, that we're not really getting the monitoring and enforcement. So that's a whole different take on it.
But
than
I
what
think
I
those
was
are, I think those are both. I mean, having been, again, I missed the last one, but having been to a number of the access committees meetings, clearly that is a focus. And, it's, in my opinion, the biggest problem they have, and I'm sure they own it, is when land goes into private property, you get property owners who are, if the town owned that land over by the Aggers, there would be no issue in terms of, I won't say no way, but there would be very little issue in terms of access, et cetera. The fact that it wasn't, properly put into a deed, the town didn't go through the motions, means that you got a private piece of land over there, and it may have to go back to court if you want access. It's really a problem. But anyway, it's a real issue for them. The access is an issue, but it sounds like from what Benny's saying and from what I'm seeing and the notes he's sending over, that the how well the properties are being kept. And for the town really doesn't have anyone who's done this. I mean, neighbors might call and complain because somebody threw a couch out there or whatever. But it's a real reasonable thing, I think. But anyway, so
the neighbors
send
are
this
probably
out.
the ones throwing the couches.
Well, there's an attitude in town that if you're not told no, then you can do it. And I'll give you an example of one that you guys looked at very carefully on Kincaid. Is that the name of the street? Just above
Yeah.
the Count Hollow.
Mm.
I talked to the person after that was withdrawn or turned down. And I said, well, you guys are already over the line. He said, yeah, I know. So, there's the attitude that you do it until you're told no.
Right. And I think, the reality with a lot of that land is that people really don't know unless you really look at the map and kind of, they can go over and no one's gonna jump on them,
But in that case, if that land had been inspected, then you would have known, or the town would have known, that the garden plots of these people are already on town land.
right. I think the thing that my sense with it, and I've not actually been involved, not involved, but know more about what the seashore has done. The seashore is pretty strict about that. If they find something, they will go, and a number of very supportive people of the seashore, but if they lose track of where their line is, et cetera, to give them the benefit of the doubt. But if they find it, they're very assertive with it. And it, you know, so this is Ryan's purpose. I applaud it, frankly. I think it's like, let's look at this, and we don't have to be the ones who are taking the action, but we can report what we're seeing.
Yeah, I'd want that clarified.
No, we're an advisory committee, and we're not gonna, you know, that's not our purpose. But and again, even where this, my assumption is, and that's what I wrote down, but I haven't heard, is that this report would go to the select board. So it's, again, these aren't conservation properties, many of them. So. Okay,
Bruce,
so we'll look at
Bruce-
that later. I'll send this stuff out. Anything else anybody has?
Bruce, excuse me, the charge of the Open Space Committee, is it specifically tied to the Conservation Commission?
No, it is not. No, and in fact, it's disposition of town-owned property. And
That's
any,
right.
and you know, I read that to the Board of Selectmen. I mean, I went in there, it felt like, you know, this is, they're not completely on top of what we were set up to do, and they can change that if they'd like. But we are involved not only with putting land into conservation and to using our CPC money to get some land, but putting a recommendation around disposition of town-owned property. One of the things is upsetting, I have not addressed it with them, but I don't believe we ever were asked, first year, we were asked about that property over in 3014, you know, and I really, I don't want to pick a fight on this record out there, but I really feel like they knew what our thoughts were, and they avoided us. We never got an invitation to make a recommendation around that property. And then it was getting really close and other things were going on. It didn't happen. It ended the way it should have ended, in my opinion. And I'm not even against, I'm not saying they shouldn't build it, but the process has been ugly, in my opinion. And, you know, we are a committee that should take a vote on any transfer of town property. So.
Well, that was a setup question because I knew the answer.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, we'll motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Move.
Second.
Second. All in
Sorry I
favor?
had to jump up. I did a long bike ride today and my legs are cramping up all over the place.
You got to take the electrolyte stuff.
Yeah, right.
Yep, drink a Gatorade, Gatorade
Yeah.
Zero.
We're doing,
Bye-bye.
Yeah, all right.
okay. Any nays? No. So
No.
we're officially adjourned. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. Thanks, everybody.
Bye all.
Right.
But I saw. Wait a minute, where is this?